chilling tales for dark nights.
Calculations. Written by John Patrick. Performed by Jordan Lester. Numbers are everywhere. Numbers are everything. And the numbers don't lie. The writing that you're reading right now, binary code, involving more ones and zeros than you can possibly imagine, jumbled together to create the exact text that I've told it to. I read numbers like everyone else reads words. It's what made me a strange child in elementary school, but earned me a doctorate in astrophysics barely 4 years out of high school. I spent the next decade with my body next to some of the most powerful telescopes on the planet, but with my mind thousands of light years away. 2 years ago, I detected something amazing. Exoplanets are frequently discovered by first locating their gravitational silhouette. I've discovered numerous exoplanets as part of a team, but I had yet to nab one solo. My colleagues attributed this to poor luck. Numerically speaking, luck does not exist. I knew it would simply be a matter of time until I found one, and sure enough, I was correct. In late December 2013, while my friends and colleagues were off celebrating the new year, I was glued to a monitor, following gravitational breadcrumbs that I had stumbled upon over the past few weeks. I'd located what at first appeared to be anomalous data, but the more I looked at it, the less it looked like an error, and more like a gravity silhouette. As the night drew on, the area became increasingly well-defined, and by the time most people were recovering from their hangover on New Year's Day, I had begun the process of writing several simultaneous papers relating to my new discovery to the world. I knew I would need more data than I currently had to officially prove the existence of a planet, but I wanted to be the sole author of the paper and the sole discoverer of the planet. This meant that I'd need to bring in some people to get a second opinion, but in doing so, I'd open myself to some risks. I chose my closest friend, Glenn. He was 10 years my senior, but we attended grad school at the same time. After reading my reports, Glenn was almost as elated as I was. He knew how important it was for me to make this discovery and was more than willing to help. As he checked my work, he very quickly reached the same conclusion I came to a few weeks ago. Exoplanet. Over the course of the next 3 days, we set the large collector array to scan the area in which I'd found the planet. The goal was to collect more data points and to allow Glenn to confirm, as I already had, that the planet was there. The data was fed through a massive supercomputer to gather, decode, and sort the points. This took several minutes, and as its first bits of information were coming back, we both quickly noticed that something was amiss. My planet wasn't where it was supposed to be. At least that's what it looked like. The gravitational tug seemed too big, and was approximately 2 astronomical units further from Earth than previously predicted. Once more data points had been collected, it became apparent that there were actually 2 objects causing a gravitational tug in the area of my planet. The first was obviously the planet itself, but the second source seemed to be more massive. It was approximately the same mass as Jupiter, according to a few quick and dirty calculations. The planet I had detected was about 1/10 that size. The computer had analyzed all but the 3rd day at this point. I was excited, confused, and nervous, all at the same time. Suddenly, there was only one gravitational source again. The big one. My planet was nowhere to be found. Glenn, at first, simply thought that we'd made a mistake. I'll admit that I'm not perfect, but I'm astute enough to realize when something is wrong. and it wasn't that I'd forgotten to carry the 2 in my calculations. Glenn was sympathetic, but couldn't argue with the data. I set the array to scan the area for an additional day, but only caught the faintest hint of a gravity silhouette of whatever the larger object was that passed through the system. Detecting the final moments of a planet, as a mystery object obliterated it, would almost certainly be unprecedented. This, however, was impossible to confirm, based on the sparse data I had. Glenn agreed, and I knew I'd need something else to confirm. There was always the possibility of older data showing the gravitational anomalies that I detected initially, but I'd likely spend the next decade searching for proof of a planet that was no more. I needed a different approach. I went back to the drawing board in an attempt to track the position of the unidentified object that I'd named MX-1, based on its last known trajectory. MX-1 was an enigma. I couldn't track it using conventional methods, as it didn't seem to need to have an orbit of any kind. I was using both my and Glenn's allotted telescope time before the university issued a warning that they'd need the entirety of the array for a massive scan of the Carina Nebula belt the following month. I had to find something quickly, or risk losing the trail altogether. Using the data I gleaned from the previous encounter, I was able to locate a small system with what had once been a very large star at the center. The star had gone supernova and was currently a white dwarf. It didn't quite have the mass to go black hole, or the planets wouldn't have been there. There were actually several planets orbiting the white dwarf, 2 of which had a mass somewhat comparable to Earth. I watched it for 2 days before I noticed the gravitational anomaly again. By the 5th day, the first planet was completely gone. Using the same data, I was able to decipher what appeared to be a massive dust cloud in the wake of MX-1. The cloud was mostly rock with very little metallic debris, unusual for the type of exoplanet that had been destroyed. There should have been massive quantities of iron left in the wake of its destruction. The second, a less dense ice planet that had cooled billions of years prior, was next. Within a week, the system was devoid of any object with a mass comparable to or greater than Earth's moon. MX-1 disappeared almost as quickly as it came. I had several theories to check, and with a very limited time to do so. I repositioned the telescopic array as soon as I physically could. I tracked 3 other systems that met a similar fate. Planets gone, star seemingly unfazed. At first I thought, how insanely unlucky these planets had to be. That MX-1 was basically bowling a galactic strike as it hurtled through the cosmos at a rate of several thousand miles per second. It was then that I realized that the velocity wasn't constant. Without any sort of gravity assist, MX-1 had picked up speed. The following day, I lost access to the large array when the Carina Nebula scan took place. It was a huge undertaking, and several well-known physicists would be in town from all over the globe. I took the chance to share my findings with them, but I was mostly overshadowed by a discovery in the Carina Nebula. Several stars, relatively close to one another, within a few light years, had gone supernova at nearly the same time. Upon further inspection, it appeared to be a sequence. Once I looked at the data, I realized that if an object had been traveling between the 3 stars, it would have been moving at the same velocity as MX-1. I tried to explain this to anyone who would listen, but most dismissed me as someone simply trying to steal the thunder of the discovery in any way possible. One of the stars currently going supernova was Eta Carinae, which was relatively close to Earth. It wasn't expected to explode for another 3 million years. I quickly looked back through my data, and all but one of the systems visited by MX-1 had stars that had already gone supernova. The third and final system was the outlier. In the commotion caused by the supernova of Eta Carinae, I was able to commandeer one station to quickly look back at the remaining star. Sure enough, it was now in the supernova phase as well. Only one person gave any sort of inclination that he was interested in my work, a Dr. Liu from the University of Beijing. He, in perfect English mind you, informed me that he thought there was something to my study. After showing me some of the data he'd collected, we were able to spot some background gravitational tugs in the area of the supernova. He informed me that he would be in touch, as he was slated to return to Beijing in less than 12 hours. I continued my research once I was able to access the array again, but the trail had gone cold. MX-1 was gone. I could find no trace of it. Dr. Liu never contacted me again, and in the beginning of 2015, I discovered that his charter jet home had vanished without a trace. There was no crash site, no debris, and no radar pings after it left the airport. The next few months followed the same pattern, until the university informed me that I was being forced to focus on research in other areas, other than exoplanets. My research hadn't yielded a useful piece of scientific data in well over a year, and the funds being allocated to searching deep space with the large array were draining on the department. I acquiesced, and I almost expected that to be the end of things. 2 months ago, I was sitting in on a doctoral review for a new PhD candidate. He was very bright, had an interesting thesis, and a promising new view on how our department could locate new exoplanets with greater regularity. I was allowed to test his theory out, and I found it again. Right where a nice, dense, rocky, metallic exoplanet should have been. Instead, there was a dissipating dust cloud. I was able to track it for 3 weeks. Its velocity was astonishing. It had greatly picked up speed since I'd last seen it. I was able to pick up what appeared to be a gaseous cloud of heavily charred burnt iron and hydrogen in the wake of MX-1. It appeared as though whatever MX-1 was, it was being fueled by some sort of iron-hydrogen fusion. Last month, I lost the ability to track it. MX-1 began to accelerate, beyond what I had estimated was theoretically possible. At the same time, our large array was taken down for maintenance, and I was essentially blind. I did, however, have 2.5 days of data that hadn't been processed by the computer yet. As the data became available, I realized that MX-1 didn't follow a normalized path. It appeared to be aiming, very specifically, for planets that were dense and rocky with an iron or nickel core. Lastly, I realized that the last known trajectory of the object put it on course to intercept our solar system. And soon. I had calculated both when it would be in our vicinity and when it would reach Earth. The implications were staggering. I informed my superiors, as well as several other prominent astrophysicists. In doing so, I was met with disdain, disbelief, and utter distrust. They don't want to look at the facts. Even Glenn gave up on me. He told me that, for the good of my career, I needed to find something else to study. I returned home yesterday, absolutely distraught, and drank myself to sleep. The next morning, I woke to a knock at the door, well before I wanted to drag myself from the couch. A single sheet of paper was quickly slid under the door, and I heard footsteps rapidly retreat down the hallway. The paper had one terse message from Dr. Liu himself.
We know they are coming. We are prepared for them. They are not prepared for us, but stirring the public into unrest will only hurt our chances at this point. Stay inside, lock your doors, and pray to your God that our defenses can neutralize the threat, as we believe they can. If all goes according to plan, no one will even know they were here.
Last night, I was able to track an utterly massive explosion behind Jupiter. It was large enough to have been an Earth-sized planet. Due to the location of the explosion, however, it was largely written off by the scientific community as a comet impacting one of Jupiter's many moons. I breathed a slight sigh of relief. Today, I checked my mail at work and found another cryptic message from Dr. Liu.
We have failed. There are many. We do not know the exact number, but Earth will fall. Make your peace.
I quickly pulled up a few nearby systems on the university's large array and saw so many gravitational tugs that I couldn't even comprehend what I was looking at. I fed the numbers into the computer and quickly read the report. If my calculations are correct, the numbers say there are dozens of spheres. Some much larger than MX-1, headed for our solar system. And the numbers don't lie.
Chilling tales for dark nights.